Around the globe, everyone faces unique challenges, but for Muslims, these struggles are often intensified by cultural misunderstandings, discrimination, and the complex intersection of religion and politics.
November marks Islamophobia Awareness Month. Last year, the United Nations Human Rights Council adopted a resolution condemning the desecration of religious texts, including the Quran, despite opposition from the previous government.
This video isn't about generalizing the Muslim experience. It's about shedding light on the realities Muslims face, especially those living in non-Muslim majority countries or conflict zones. We'll dive into the misunderstandings of Islam, the rise of Islamophobia, the struggles of maintaining religious identity, and the geopolitical battles that affect Muslim communities worldwide. Where are all these misunderstandings and discrimination rising? Is this hate or fact? Do Muslims deserve this? This isn't an attack on any group, nor is it a sweeping generalization about Muslims. Instead, it's an exploration of the obstacles that come with being a Muslim in today's world, and why these challenges shouldn't be ignored. For Muslims, one of the biggest hurdles they face is the widespread misunderstanding of Islam. With over 1.9 billion Muslims across the globe, Islam is a rich and diverse faith. Yet in many parts of the world, especially in the West, Islam is often boiled down to dangerous stereotypes, violence, oppression, and extremism. This oversimplified narrative ignores the true essence of Islam, a religion of peace, charity, and submission to the will of God. Unfortunately, the media often amplifies the actions of a few extremists, overshadowing the message of peace that Islam promotes. As a result, Muslims live with the burden of defending their faith, even though they're disconnected from the violence perpetrated by a tiny minority. Constantly combating these misconceptions is exhausting. It's draining to have to explain your beliefs every time someone assumes you're associated with terror or oppression. These negative stereotypes force Muslims to continually clarify who they are, making them feel like outsiders in their own communities. Perhaps the most painful reality for Muslims today is experiencing Islamophobia. In many Western countries, Muslims face prejudice and hostility because of their faith. Whether it's a suspicious stare, unfair treatment at work, or being discriminated against in education or housing, the signs of Islamophobia are all around. We're seeing a disturbing rise in Islamophobic hate crimes. Muslims have become targets of violence, harassment, and verbal abuse, just for looking or praying differently. The tragic attacks in Christchurch, New Zealand, or the mass shooting at a Quebec mosque are grim reminders that Islamophobia isn't just a misunderstanding. It can be deadly. But it's not always about physical violence. More often, it's about being treated like a second-class citizen. Muslims are questioned about their religious practices, whether it's their prayer times, fasting during Ramadan, or wearing the hijab. These microaggressions build up over time, leaving Muslims feeling isolated and alienated in societies that pride themselves on diversity. For many Muslims, especially those who are visibly Muslim, there's a constant undercurrent of fear of being profiled, judged, or blamed for things they didn't do. Discrimination isn't just personal, it's institutional, from airports to schools to workplaces. The media plays a massive role in shaping public perception of Muslims, but unfortunately, the mainstream portrayal often fuels fear and suspicion. The stories we see, terrorism, extremism, and violence, are the ones that dominate the narrative, while the rich diversity of Muslim lives is pushed aside. This negative media portrayal perpetuates harmful stereotypes: Muslims as terrorists, oppressed women, or radical minorities. These depictions don't just miss the mark, they're damaging. They make Muslims seem other or less than, reinforcing an us versus them mentality that divides communities. For Muslims, this constant misrepresentation leads to feelings of invisibility. Their successes, struggles, and everyday lives are overshadowed by extremist acts. The impact of this skewed portrayal is massive. It affects how Muslims are treated, how they're policed, and how they're viewed by their non-Muslim neighbors. A shift in media representation is crucial. We need to highlight the diversity within Muslim communities, showcasing that being Muslim isn't a monolithic experience, but one rich in culture, history, and individual expression. For Muslims in conflict zones, life is a brutal struggle for survival. In war-torn regions like Syria or Palestine, being Muslim often means being targeted by violence, displacement, and oppression. In these areas, religion and politics are intertwined, and being Muslim can make you a direct target for brutal attacks. Take Syria, for example. Over half of the country's population has been displaced, many of them Muslims. Families are forced to flee, living in refugee camps or making dangerous journeys to escape violence. Meanwhile, in Myanmar, the Rohingya Muslims face ethnic cleansing, violence, and ongoing persecution. But it's not just about physical harm. Muslims in conflict zones face economic devastation, loss of education, healthcare, and basic resources. Even those who manage to escape often carry the trauma of losing loved ones, homes, and a sense of security. While these struggles may feel distant for those of us in peaceful countries, the reality is that millions of Muslims live in constant fear of violence. As the global political landscape shifts, Muslims are often left voiceless in the decisions that impact their lives. Despite the countless challenges Muslims face, one of the most remarkable things about their experience is their incredible resilience. Around the world, Muslims continue to stand strong in their faith, advocating for peace, justice, and understanding. They give back to their communities in countless ways, through charity, activism, and cultural contributions. Instead of letting adversity defeat them, Muslims draw strength from their faith. Islam teaches patience, perseverance, and the importance of community, values that empower Muslims to face hardship with grace. Even when the world seems indifferent to their struggles, Muslims find unity in their shared identity and in their commitment to one another. For those who aren't Muslim, it's crucial to acknowledge these challenges and stand in solidarity with Muslims. Only through mutual support can we begin to break down barriers and build a more inclusive world for everyone.